Hello, I'm Czardus, and welcome back to my Cities Skylines for New Players series. Today we are going to talk about traffic and public transit, and some things that you should know about that. But before we get into that, be sure to hit that subscribe button if you are new to the channel. I have loads of Cities Skylines content that you might find useful. Anyway, traffic basics. Let's go ahead and jump in here. I've loaded up a city that I've been working on called Middleshire. And you might want to check out that series, by the way. But the first thing about traffic is to go up here to the info views, and then you can go to traffic. And that gives you your overlay of your traffic. This will show you the areas that have a high amount of traffic for compared to the road size. It does not necessarily show you where you have backups. So, for example, we have red here. And that is flowing really well on this road, but it is no different from this road where in terms of color, whereas here we do have a backup. There's lots of trucks waiting to get up here and unload grain into this silo here, or crops into this silo, whatever types of crops they are, I'm not sure. But it does show you the level, like kind of the traffic density for that section of road. And so that's why this is red and this is red, and they're the same color. Your traffic flow will just be an average of what you have. And if you upgrade the road, then you will be able to get more traffic on that. So like on these roads, you can see there's more vehicles going through, and it is actually not all that red. But if this were a smaller road, it would definitely be red. But again, up here, we have a pretty red space, but the vehicles are moving quite well. These are just parked vehicles down on the corner here. And so that is one thing to keep in mind, that red on your traffic view is not necessarily bad. What you want to really avoid is cars that are just standing still. That is what you don't want to have. Other things you can see with the info views is the traffic routes. So if you click on this and then you click on a road, you can see all of the traffic that is using that road, where they're coming from and where they're going. This can be really useful in figuring out, for example, if you have traffic that is bypassing your highway and going through your city instead. So like, or we can click here, and this is all the traffic on the highway is going right around there, which is really good. This road here is a major arterial into the city, and we don't see any traffic that is going all the way through the city. So that is really good to see on this city. Other things about path routes, the vehicles will calculate the route that they take when they leave their starting point, and then it will not take into account what traffic is on the roads. It only takes into account the speed limit for the road and the distance involved. You can impact the speed limit by upgrading the road. We can't see the speed limit itself, but I don't think it shows. Oh yeah, it does. Okay, you can see here, this 2-lane road, the speed is 40. That is the maximum speed people can go on that road. And that is true for all of the 4-lane or the 2-lane roads, the small ones. If you do a medium road, the speed increases to 50. So you can get them to go a little bit faster. And the large roads, it is even faster at 60. Then the highway, it goes 100 for all of the highway roads. So that is one way that the game gets the Sims to choose to take the higher roads and stuff like that. So if you really need to adjust how your traffic is choosing their routes, you can change the type of road you have through an area to try to encourage people to go a different way. Another way that you can impact the routes is by using an old town policy. So if we were to go down here into, say, New Bingham, you can add a policy and go to city planning and go to Old Town. So now what that does is the only traffic allowed to go into this district is traffic that is going somewhere in that district. There can be no through traffic. So we're going to see, if we speed this up, the traffic is going to change in that area, because now all of these vehicles that are trying to cut through here are going to have to find a new route. And so they will do that, and we'll see that here just in a moment. So now you can see the impact this policy has had on the district. The traffic inside Old Bingham is definitely improved. There is much less traffic in that area, but the traffic elsewhere is worse because, for example, here, the only way that people can get from Paddy Industrial Estate to New Bingham is to go this way. They can't go through over here because that is the only path they have available. So we have more traffic over here, this roundabout, and all through here. So that is one thing to keep in mind, that you might not want to have Old Town very much because it reduces the number of routes that you have available. And multiple routes is one way that you can make sure to decrease your traffic issues. So the more paths that people can take to get to different areas, the better you will get. You won't have any bottlenecks in your traffic. So like if we only had one bridge over this rail here, then everybody would be filtered through that bridge to get across the rail. But by having multiple bridges and even a pedestrian path here, there is many ways that the traffic can get across, and that spreads everything out, and that can help. Another little thing to keep in mind is to keep good distancing between your intersections. So this city does not have any that are really bad in terms of being close together. But like here, we might have a little bit of an issue. These are a little bit close, not too bad. But if we were to come over here and say add an intersection, or add a road that goes this way, we can't even get one in there. The game doesn't like it. Yeah, see, it won't even let me build an intersection there. But if we put one here, these would be too close together, and that will cause traffic because vehicles will only go through an intersection if there is space on the other side for them. So it is important to make sure that you keep those spaced out. Now, another thing to keep in mind is that you can go in here to the traffic routes and click junctions, and you can toggle the traffic lights. I typically like to see few intersections. In fact, this one we can switch to toggle off the traffic light and put a stop sign there for the side traffic. Your larger roads, you don't want them to stop as much. And the smaller roads, you want to make them stop and give the larger road priority. Unfortunately, when you build a medium road, those found in this tab, or a large road, it will automatically put in a traffic light at every intersection. So be sure that you go in and manually turn those off. Another thing to keep in mind is lane mathematics. You can see that in play over here on the highway. We have 3 lanes here, and in order to make this lane on the left an exit lane, we made sure that at that junction here, we have 1 lane going off on the off-ramp and only 2 lanes going straight ahead. That way, all of the traffic that is in that left lane, in at least that one segment before that, will be traffic that is exiting the highway. And then similarly over here, we have 2 lanes and 2 lanes coming together, and we give them 4 so that each lane has its own area, and that keeps the traffic flowing really well. So make sure you use your lane mathematics, as Biffa calls it, to get your lanes to be nice in there. Another thing you can do with that is add an asymmetric road, which I believe we have one over in here perhaps, but yes, we do. So here we have an asymmetric road. You can find that is from the Mass Transit DLC, I believe. So you have to have that DLC. But if you go over here and choose asymmetrical 3-lane road, then you can create or like upgrade your road. We could do it over here as well. So that now there is a turn lane. So because of lane mathematics, we have created this lane is the only one that can turn onto that road. This one is the one that goes straight. And then over here we have one that can turn, and then the other one is the one that can go straight, but it also can turn as well, because there's 2 lanes over here for it to go to. But that is one way to also impact the amount or the way your traffic works. Another thing to keep in mind is service buildings. You want to make sure that your service buildings are not on your main roads because they will have vehicles stopping frequently, especially things such as the postal sorting facility. That gives a lot of mail trucks coming in and out. You can see them here. And if you put that on a major road, it will cause a traffic backup. You can see that happening a little bit over here. It's not a major road, but that was what was happening with all the crops being delivered here. Trucks were stopping to get deliveries. Here you can see it again. Lots of trucks stopping to use that facility. So if that were a major road here, it would cause more and more traffic. You also want to spread out and mix your zoning. So let's take a look at the zoning view. This city is not the best example because we have a very large industrial area here, but we do have other industrial areas like the lumber and the farm here, and we have another little generic industry here, and actually that's agricultural, I believe, there. And then we have other farming and industry spread out a little bit. And then we also have low density commercial mixed all together. We have office mixed in here as well, and with high density residential and commercial in there as well. And that gives many different ways for your traffic to go, or many different areas that get served and things like that. If you have all of your zoning in one area, say we put all of the residential here, all of the industrial here, and all commercial over here, that will force all traffic to go in those directions. And it will reduce the number of routes that are being utilized. So that's why it's important to mix that up and spread it across your entire map. One last thing about traffic before we move on to public transit is road hierarchy. Now, I talked about this in the road building video as well, but let's talk about it here in traffic. So road hierarchy, you want to make sure that you have your highways have very, very limited or no stops at all. The highway here can go all the way through. Anybody on the highway doesn't have to stop if they're driving all the way through the city or on this bypass here. And that keeps that traffic flowing well. Then you have arterial roads like this one here. That has very few stops at all. And that is what you want. You might have a few intersections where they might go, or like in here, there is a very tiny bit of zoning on the road itself. But your arterials in general, you want to have very limited stops there as well, but don't quite feel like it's a highway where you have to completely avoid stops altogether. Then you have collector roads. Like this road here is a collector road. It brings traffic together from the local roads that are found in individual neighborhoods and things like that, and they go into the collector, then they feed into the arterial, and they feed into the highway. And using road hierarchy is another way to really impact your traffic, where your busiest roads will have the fewest number of stops, and your least busy roads, your really local roads where people live, where people work, will have more stops, and just generally they should have less traffic altogether anyway, and hence they can do more stops. Now, moving on to public transit, let's take a look at the public transit view. You can find that in the info views, and then go down to public transit, or transport it's called. And here you can see all the different types of transit in this city. We actually don't have all of them in play, but things to keep in mind with public transit are your general design. When you are building a route for your public transit, you want to make sure you follow a path that Sims are likely to want to go. You can find that out by going to traffic routes. So again, if we click over here and click on a road here, this is a local road, you can see people are taking that road and getting into the city this way. So anybody taking this road here is likely to want to go in that direction. And I guess that car is no longer there, the one that was going all the way through. Or if we click on this collector road, you can see that they're going that way. So that's why we have a tram that follows that route and makes it into town. Generally, your traffic will go from residential to industrial, or residential to commercial or office. They also might go direct from industrial to commercial. These are individual sims that we're concerned about here because they're the ones that would take public transit. So you want to make sure that your public transit routes are going and connecting your residential to industry or residential to commercial or industry to commercial. That is the route you want to make sure they go. You also want to pay attention to your hierarchy in your public transit. Generally, you want to take your smaller public transit options. They are conveniently sorted in that way on this map, or on this view here, where buses have the least number of people per bus. And then these are trolley buses here, and then they feed into trams or metro, or the highest capacity is your passenger rail. And that is the way you want your transit to go. So you can see here we have buses that are feeding into the trams that then come into the downtown area, where we also have a passenger train station. We don't have any passenger train routes in this particular city, but if we did, they could be commuter routes that are feeding out into further areas out. And that is one thing to keep in mind with public transit, is your hierarchy. Finally, with public transit, you want to pay attention to your budget. Keep in mind that buses become available relatively early in the game. I believe they are available all the way back here at 2,800 people. You get both bus and tram available. But your city at 2,800 people is probably not going to be big enough to support a bus and tram network. So be very careful. You might want to wait until your city is maybe about 20,000 or 30,000 people before you really start looking at your public transit. And you want to make sure that you start small and then go bigger. So like this city has 70,000 people and it doesn't have a single metro line yet, because metro is the most expensive. If we take a look at this, metro just for the track is $80 a cell to build that, whereas a tram track is only $65, which is pretty expensive on its own, but most of the time you can get by with just upgrading a road into a tram road, and that can be much cheaper. And so you want to make sure that you only build what you need, otherwise you will really be straining your budget. So that is all that I have to say about traffic and public transit. Be sure to catch my next video, which will be about realistic town layouts. And we'll talk about that in the next video. So thanks for watching, and I will catch you next time. Take care.